early on, it was very, very scary. And so I kind of made a promise to myself, in the beginning that, I would find a way to make so much good happen despite, or because of it in a way that I could never kind of look back and wish it, never wouldn't have happened, Grateful for what I'm involved with, for the music I'm writing, the people I'm collaborating with. And, I wouldn't have met my partner, my wife, if it weren't for my ear problems, because I wouldn't have written the music on my first album. I wouldn't have released the first album, and she wouldn't have heard it overseas. It randomly came up on a Pandora, internet radio station, some 12 years ago.
Hi, you're listening to Conversations with Musicians with Leah Roseman, which I hope inspires you through the personal stories of a fascinating diversity of musical guests. Joel Styzens is a composer and multi-instrumentalist whose career as a drummer was transformed due to sudden hearing damage. He talked to me about dealing with the physical and psychological effects of hyperacusis and tinnitus, the beauty of hammered dulcimer, and you'll hear clips from his first 2 albums, Relax Your Ears and Resonance. He's a music educator who loves to help students to make discoveries on their own, and we spoke about Joel's passion for all kinds of artistic expression and its positive recent experience at the Ragdale artist residency. Joel's personal story is so inspiring and his music is so beautiful. Please check out his albums, which are linked in the show notes for you. Like all my episodes, you can watch this on my YouTube channel or listen to the podcast on many podcast platforms, and I've also linked the transcript. It's a joy to bring these inspiring episodes to you every week, and I do all the many jobs of research, production, and publicity. Have a look at the show notes of this episode, where you'll find all the links, including different ways to support this podcast. Hey Joel, thanks so much for joining me here today.
You're welcome. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I've really been enjoying listening to your 2 albums you have out so far, especially Resonance, because of all the string playing, and I'm a violinist, so I really enjoy the quartet and the cello. Now, you have such an interesting story, which we'll get into, but when I start to look at people coming on my podcast, I think, okay, what are the things? So, you're multi-instrumentalist and composer, and hearing preservation advocate is one of your important identities. Maybe it'd be good to get into that for people who don't know your background.
So I think, it was January 26th, 2006. I suddenly woke up with really severe tinnitus and hyperacusis, which is the constant ringing and extreme kind of sensitivity in my ears. Everything from my own voice to the kind of high frequency sound of the water and the sink faucet was bothering me. I soon realized even the birds chirping outside was irritating to my ears. And I was really trying not to have a panic attack. So that, would eventually kind of stop me completely in my tracks as far as my career as a professional drummer, and all my performing and teaching and recording, and I had to start some different therapies, kind of auditory neurological therapies with the audiologist that I eventually sought out, and kind of found my own sort of personal therapy. Just with kind of grabbing an old dusty acoustic guitar, that one actually right there, from the corner and picking it up and, holding it against my body and feeling the vibrations. It became really therapeutic for me. And that's how I started writing the music, which would be on my, eventually on my first album. But previous to that, I got a degree in percussion and jazz performance, and with focus on drum set, and that was kind of my whole life since I was maybe like around 9 years old when I started. Everything was just drums, constantly playing 6-7 nights a week. So it eventually, took its toll. That combined with maybe about a dozen ear infections I had when I was a little kid was sort of a predisposition of sorts. So yeah, all kind of led up to this particular day that I mentioned and developing the issues.
Did you have warning signs like the other form of tinnitus where it's sort of like a roaring or whooshing sound?
I mean, I do recall, having some different periods where the ringing would kind of be there, would come and go. And, along this whole period for years and years, like I was wearing earplugs a lot of the time. I even had custom molded earplugs from an audiologist and everything before all this stuff started. But, especially when I was younger, I wasn't wearing, a lot of ear protection. But I was, still aware in some manner. Most of the time when I practiced when I was younger, I did have like isolation headphones. But I think mostly kind of the live performing, I wasn't wearing earplugs because I just didn't give myself a chance to kind of get used to them, or I wasn't familiar with the different options available as far as, more musician earplugs with filters so you can retain the clarity of the sound but still protect your ears, things like that. Wasn't fully aware of when I was younger. And yeah, I think it just kind of took its toll little by little. And of course, hearing loss is cumulative and you may not be aware that you're suffering, inducing hearing loss or damage until it can turn into any number of, difficult situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I found your story very chilling because, I'm a professional musician and orchestras are very loud. So we do wear, I have to say I wear earplugs more often now for loud shows than I used to when I was younger. But yeah, just even going out when I was in my 20s, loud bars and stuff, there was no understanding at that time of how damaging it could be. And certainly I've had periods of hyperacusis and I definitely have tinnitus that comes and goes, but more like a constant sort of like, it's a different kind of sound, but I could definitely relate. And I was thinking, I mean, your livelihood, your identity, your friends, your whole world must have imploded. Yeah,
it kind of did. It's nice that I can sort of chuckle now, right? It's been, 20 years almost. Mm-hmm. It's still difficult on a daily basis, honestly, especially the hyperacusis, the sensitivity, mm-hmm. The ringing at this point, I could just about care less about it. I've gotten used to it. It's kind of my own little meditation tone. But the sensitivity is still difficult, especially, in Chicago and the noisy city and different areas when I travel. And but like anything, you figure out how to adapt and adjust and hopefully just keep moving forward. And, when the problem started, I sort of luckily saw how far it could really take me down, if I were to let it. And that almost scared me more than the problems. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, I have actually had to take maybe 2 or 3 times, like suicide calls from people essentially with, who have developed the same kind of problems, and I'm not trained for that kind of work. But early on, it was very, very scary. And so I kind of made a promise to myself, in the beginning that, I would find a way to make so much good happen despite, or because of it in a way that I could never kind of look back and wish it, never wouldn't have happened, Mm-hmm. And I am, grateful for what I'm involved with, for the music I'm writing and the people I'm collaborating with. And, I wouldn't have met my partner, my wife, if it weren't for my ear problems, because I wouldn't have written the music on my first album. I wouldn't have released the first album, and she wouldn't have heard it overseas. It randomly came up on a Pandora internet a radio station, some 12 years ago, and caught her ear, and she ended up finding my website and sending me a nice email, and we eventually ended up collaborating on an animation project. She was doing the animation, I was doing the sound design and music, and anyway, that's how I met my wife. And so many different people I collaborate with, and really I'll just mention maybe one more thing, that after kind of spending the majority of my career playing drums on other people's music, now to get to create my own and share it and see that, besides being therapeutic for myself, that putting it out there, that it can be therapeutic for other people, and, people can really get something out of it. It's really makes it, fully worth it.
Well, that's a beautiful love story about Fernanda. I was going to ask you about her because I knew she was an artist, designer, and architect. So I was interested in that, the discussions you might have. But maybe it would be good for people to know what was one of her favorite pieces off your first album, Relax Your Ears, and we could have a clip of that for people to hear.
Oh, nice. That would be nice. I'm not sure if I can remember. I should just run in the other room and ask her. Now you really got me thinking about it, because I want to sort of give you the right answer.
Well, go ask her. That's fine.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Viv.
Okay.
VIV, which is interesting because that's one of those little tracks hidden inside the album that, you kind of have to discover. You have to sort of listen to the whole album to discover that song, I feel like. And it's very, very minimalist, but it has a really nice, kind of uplifting, fun energy, like a lightness to it. There's a lot of other tracks on the album that have a little bit of this darkness, and for obvious reasons, right, where the music kind of came from. But that's one of the lighter ones that gives you a little break from from all the other super heavy emotional tracks.
Thanks for that.
This is a clip from Viv from Relax Your Ears.
So I am curious about discussions you might have with your partner about, city design in terms of sound and acoustics and the human scale. Do you guys ever talk about that stuff?
Yeah, actually. Yeah. I mean, being in Chicago, and the more I travel around the world, the more I love traveling, but the more I'm thankful when I come back. It's like such a balanced city, as far as architecture and design, and it's like you can wrap your head around it. Unlike New York, I cannot wrap my head around New York. You have the main city kind of downtown center with the skyscrapers, and then you have all the kind of close neighborhoods nearby, and there's a lot of green spaces everywhere, and it's just a very balanced city. As far as did you kind of mention maybe an aspect of sort of noise pollution is the kind of city soundscape? Yeah, I mean my partner actually is working on a project right now kind of related to that, and sort of inviting the public to kind of audibly hone in more on the sounds of the river and the lake through the development of some kind of like sound sculptures. I won't go into too much detail here, but yeah, we talk about a lot of that stuff all the time, and have done some different collaborations together related to some of that stuff. And I definitely have a much bigger, deeper appreciation for design and architecture now. And my partner also designed the artwork for the album.
For the new album, right?
Yeah, the newest. Yep. Because we were kind of talking about Relax Your Ears, my first album. So yeah, for the newer one, Resonance. So that's also super special because, she heard the music from my first album when she was living overseas in London, and sort of discovered my music from that, and then ended up designing the artwork for the next main album. So it's kind of crazy. We still sometimes, sort of pinch ourselves about how that all, happened and went down. And we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary last October and stuff. So it's kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. I was talking to somebody yesterday about how, these long distance relationships over the internet are more and more common, but can be super difficult to navigate. You've never met the person, and that must have been some process.
Yeah, I mean, that was just, it just started as a purely creative, project and collaboration for like an entire year, back and forth. At the time, I think I was using Skype. Is that what it was called? Now everybody talks about Zoom and all the time, but yeah, I think Skype. And I'd only use Skype sort of talking with her, so that just seemed like, that was my little avenue to communicate with her in this project. And then by the end of the project, after about a year's time or so, we both happened to become single, just independently, randomly, So we just naturally started talking more and more,
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Now, we were talking about cities in Chicago, and I know on Resonance there's a series of pieces inspired by the Botanical Gardens, which is a place you like to go.
Yeah, so yeah, speaking of sort of the cacophony, the noise of the city, it's really important for me, and, I think should be for everyone, really, whether they know it or not, I think everybody needs a break from sort of backdrop of constant noise. But I really like to sort of immerse myself in nature and get a nice break from the sounds of the city. And Chicago Botanic Gardens, I go up there a lot. It just kind of started inspiring, some music. So I just started writing. And before I knew it, I had 5, 6 or so pieces for the different gardens. There's a piece inspired by the Waterfall Garden, which is for hammered dulcimer.
I love it.
Thanks. And I just chose to, just solo hammered dulcimer, and trying to just replicate kind of the flowing, sparkling cascades, on the dulcimer with some different kind of falling lines, and also trying to capture, the idea of, in some respects, we, think of water as this, kind of very simple, pure, thing, but, obviously it's immensely complex and is, basically the life force, of everything. in some respects, right? And so it has this amazing power as well. And yeah, it's kind of bizarre, right? Because you think about, you take the hydrogen, oxygen elements, and you try to separate them, it can explode. You know, it's like there's all these extreme contrasts and dynamics with it. But I kept it more minimalist.
This is a clip from Waterfall Garden. This video is from a live performance. This composition is on the album Resonance.
Yeah, and then there's two pieces for the Japanese gardens. A piece called Burijji, which is bridge in Japanese, which is kind of a introduction with piano and kind of leads you into the first garden, the first island, past the wooden bridge, and then the theme at the end of Burijji is kind of a darker theme that represents, there's a zigzag bridge that connects the two islands, and as far as I recall, traditionally it's kind of thought that evil spirits can't cross a zigzag bridge. I remember reading that somewhere, and so the idea kind of seeped in, and so I developed this kind of little darker, interesting theme. So the strings kind of come in with that at the end of that piece, and then that leads into the next piece, Niwa, which is garden in Japanese.
This clip is from the end of Burijji from the album Resonance.
For the next island, and you'll hear that theme in the middle of that one again, but on guitar and cello. And so yeah, there's different kind of motifs and things that were inspired directly from, you know, not only just the feeling I get when I'm there in the particular gardens, but, you know, actual architecture even, and design and different things, you know, in the gardens, and sort of different folklore elements, and it's all fused into you know, the writing, and yeah, and I think that piece, for example, I was just flooded with all this when I got home and sat down with the guitar and wrote like the entire piece in maybe 10 minutes or something, which is amazing because, you know, sometimes I'll write a piece and work on a piece for years. Sometimes it'll all come out in 10 minutes, you know. Yeah, and there's some other ones on there, of course, for the English walled garden, which is quite a sonic adventure, quite a journey on that one.
So your dulcimer. You're the first hammered. Well, maybe you're not the first hammered dulcimer player I've had on the podcast, but the first time we've talked about it. So I looked up. It's that David's Dulcimers are built in Oklahoma. There's this company. So did you go down there and choose an instrument? How did that work?
Yeah. I took. I had been looking for. There's a lot of hammered dulcimers that are smaller, and a lot of people use kind of the little wooden hammers and get this really kind of thin, almost harpsichord kind of sound. And I mean, that's nice, but I guess coming from the world of percussion with, marimbas the size of rooms and, drum set and piano and just kind of bigger, bombastic, warmer, instruments and sounds, I just kind of naturally wanted something like a bigger sound and more of a range of color. And I found out about David's Dulcimers through a friend, Max ZT, actually, of House of Waters, really great kind of world fusion group, and he's hammered dulcimer master, one of the best around. He's kind of based out of New York now. So I found out about the instrument through him, and I believe another friend here in town. But yeah, eventually I ended up taking a road trip down, getting in contact with him, and got to see the whole workshop and how he builds everything. And he ended up making a custom instrument for me, and it was amazing to see and just be a part of that. It was really special to have that opportunity. But he makes amazing instruments. As far as the hammered dulcimer, interestingly enough, I grew up hearing the instrument as a child all the time because my mom and stepdad were kind of folk musicians and, among many other things, writers. And my stepdad was the editor for the Illinois Times newspaper for a long time. But we would always go to all these different folk festivals. And so I remember seeing and hearing it. And then when I moved up to Chicago after college, I started hearing it in the room next door to where I was teaching. And just so happens I was put next to the main dulcimer teacher at the school, which I was questioning because, we had like these a room with drum kits. Then next to the hammered dulcimer, I felt bad for her. Luckily, the soundproofing was decent, but anyway, it caught my ear, and I was like, "Oh wow!" I remember that instrument. At that time, I had 12 plus years of studying drums and percussion, and all these different instruments, and so I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna already have all the facility and technique and coordination, like it's all there already." Like so. So I ended up getting one, and just kind of translated everything else I had been doing onto it, and just kind of do my own thing on it.
So that was back before you had your hearing problems. You're already playing dulcimer?
Yeah, that was like 2000, 2004, 5, 6, around there, yeah.
Okay. So when I was researching you, Joel, I came across Mac Haygood, who's done all this research on tinnitus, and I was interested to learn about objective versus subjective tinnitus. That for most people, it's not it's in their brain, it's creating the sound. Is that the case for you, or can an audiologist perceive it?
Oh yeah, I mean, most cases that I'm familiar with, it becomes a neurological situation where you have damage in the inner ear. Essentially, those microscopic hairs in the cochlea are just not working 100% correctly, and then the brain ends up misinterpreting the nerve activity from those and kind of creates like a feedback loop, not too different from like a mic and a speaker or something. And if you really think about it, like a lot of the design of speakers and microphones and things is based off of the human ear, so it sort of makes sense. And that also reminds me when my ear problems first started, I was even hearing like crackling in my ear, like distortion, which is very bizarre. But that is essentially the sound of the microscopic hairs kind of fizzling out that are damaged. So yeah, it's definitely more neurological, and in my experience, and that's why it's so complex as far as coming up with a cure, something to really help on some meaningful level. It can be difficult to get there because of the complexities, obviously, with the brain and all of the inner workings of that.
So I understand you used this neuromonic sound therapy for a while.
Yeah, I did it for maybe 3 years. I did some different white noise therapy as well. And I was just, trying anything and everything that made sense. I tried to vet things. There's a lot of snake oil, as you might say, out there. But through the guidance of some different audiologists, I tried those. I changed my diet and exercise routine a lot, and all kinds of things in a few years, and collectively it all definitely helped. It's hard to point to one individual thing and know what did what.
You said early on that the pitch you perceive is like your personal meditation note, but did you say that ironically, or is it a little bit of that as well in terms of mindfulness? Yeah, that conveys the work I've done to change the way I emotionally respond and think of it. Because in the beginning it was this intruder and this invader, but I had to do a lot of work to change my emotional response to it, and I have done quite a bit of meditation, and it's always there, so I choose to work with it instead of against it. So that's kind of what I was conveying with that. You had mentioned that a lot of people in distress have reached out to you for advice. What is the best advice you usually give them? I mean, it varies probably quite a bit depending on the individual and the circumstances, but in general, I mean, I try to just convey, to as difficult as it can be, to try to take this as the opportunity to make all other aspects of your life and your health that much better and healthier, and bring as much good and positive change as you can across all aspects of your life, and just really try to focus on that, because the stress makes it worse. And I mean, it's maybe the overarching thing that I try to convey, and just let them know that I'm here for them as much as I can be. And also different members of the Chicago tinnitus support group that I founded a long time ago, we tried to create a community of people to support each other, but also convey the realness of it, that there's no surefire cure, and it's going to be different for every individual. At least for me, I had to focus on, okay, well, at least this particular situation is not like a terminal, like life-threatening thing. And so, I'm going to have to figure out how to adjust and adapt and, keep, moving forward, because, you only have one other option other than that, and that's not, a wise one. So, but it's complex, and and I don't pretend like I am all knowing and all knowledgeable, and certainly not trained in any form or fashion as a therapist or counselor or anything, but I try to just share, from my own experience, anything that might be helpful.
Mm-hmm. This is a clip from Lifeline, from Relax Your Ears.
we could go back to your albums, like Relax Your Ears, I understand Lifeline was dedicated to your mother, who was really supportive.
Yeah, I've always been the closest with my mom, and she's definitely always been there for me, and of course she needs to have her own song on my album. But but with composing and stuff, like it just always naturally happens. I let everything just come to me. Very rarely do I sit down and think, I'm going to write a song, for this or for this person, or, it just is a natural process. But Lifeline is sort of dedication to my mom. The last piece on the album, Memento Mori, which is essentially kind of conveying what I was just talking about in a sense, which is, try to live each day to the fullest, and figure out how to adjust and adapt and keep moving forward, because we are mortal beings, right? And you never quite know when it's going to be your time, and time is precious. But that piece is kind of in the style of finger style of my stepdad, and so in a way that's kind of a dedication to him. Just different people along the way who have helped me and inspired me. They find their way into my music just naturally.
This is an excerpt from Memento Mori from Relax Your Ears. Hi, just a quick break from the episode. I wanted to let you know about some other episodes I've linked directly to this one, which I think may interest you, with Jack Hoy Litster, Kirsten Agresta Copley, Margaret Maria, and Gary Musinski, among so many episodes since 2021. It's a joy to be able to bring these meaningful conversations to you, but this project cost me quite a bit of money and lots of time. Please support this series through either my merchandise store or on my Ko-fi page. You'll find the links in the show notes. For the merch, it features a unique design by artist Steffi Kelly, and you can browse clothes, notebooks, mugs, and more, everything printed on demand. On my Ko-fi page, you can buy me one coffee or every month. You'll also find the link to sign up for my newsletter, where you'll get access to exclusive information about upcoming guests. Finally, if you're finding this episode interesting, please text it to a friend. Thanks.
Now, the wonderful cellist Sophie Webber is featured on both of these albums.
Well, actually, she's not on the first album. Katinka Kleijn is on the first album, and she's from the Chicago Symphony. And then, Sophie is on the newer Resonance. Yeah, she's from Oxford, England, and I met her here in Chicago. Yeah, we became friends and started collaborating, and she's based in San Diego now. But, she's a wonderful friend and great cellist.
Yeah, I was curious about because the ATLYS String Quartet, they're... Like in terms of putting together the album, were things done remotely, or was everyone in one place?
Everyone was in one place, yeah. I mean, they do a great job with remote work, For me and my music, it's pretty important for everybody to be, I feel, in the same room. Yeah, I mean, in general, my music is pretty acoustic and intimate and kind of bare and open. I really, think space is important, and sometimes sort of what I choose to not play in the space I keep is even more important than what I do play, the notes themselves. And so to really be in the same room and kind of feel each other's presence and energy and is really important for the proper kind of feeling and emotion to come through, I feel.
And the jazz pianist Rob Clearfield, he's a old friend of yours who plays on this as well?
Yeah, and we, for a lot of my drumming career, we got to play together in different jazz groups. He's incredible. And he's been definitely a big inspiration. And in fact, my next album that I'm working on now is going to be all my piano and string compositions. So I'm performing more as a pianist now. And I'm really excited about that.
And when are you going to be releasing that?
I hope at the end of the year, if all goes well. We'll see.
Okay. Now, I wanted to talk to you about teaching, because you had to, like, for people watching the video, they'll see you have an electronic drum kit in the background. And I believe you still teach drums, but in a different way, right?
Yeah, the electronic drums really help me to continue to teach with the tinnitus hyperacusis without it being affected. Because I can have control over the volume, can control the volume coming out of the speaker, or the student can have headphones on, the electronic drums are never going to be what an acoustic drum kit is as far as the nuance and texture and the range of colors and things. But for the main, coordination and technique work, they work, pretty decent. I teach drums and guitar and piano and hammered dulcimer.
And is songwriting or encouraging improv part of your teaching with your students?
Yeah, and also kind of multi-instrumental work. I really that's one of the things I enjoy the most is working with a student on piano, guitar, drums. Two of the three, or even all three sometimes, and really connecting, the foundations of those instruments together and using one instrument to support the other in different ways, If a piano or guitar student is struggling with rhythm, then I'm going to work with them on some drumming, some kind of body clapping and counting and drumming, and really going to the root of the issue and the kind of working it out that way. And then when I bring them back to the guitar or the piano, then all of a sudden they're playing it perfectly in rhythm, So I've been teaching for so long that, I sort of know how to efficiently, work out all those things with students, and the best way to go about it. I enjoy that a lot. I enjoy working with students, with songwriting and composing, music production, and because I also do a lot of like film and commercial composing work, and that's important to me, and gives me a chance with the students to get them using all the instruments and layering them together, and kind of allows them for a deeper understanding and perspective on their sense of time and feel and how things line up and lock together and work together. It's a little more of a magnifying glass, into their own work.
Are there ways that you approach teaching that are different than the way you were taught?
I think it's a mix. For example, when I started drum lessons, around age 9, 10 or so, I still use a lot of the main kind of books and resources, foundational things that, my teachers started me on, just because they're, really, really good resources. I think I do incorporate another element maybe that some of my teachers incorporated, which is, instead of presenting, a beat or a pattern or exercise, kind of presenting the student with every written out, variation and version of it, where you're just holding their hand through the entire thing. I like to, introduce, kind of like some main concepts with how to work with it or expand on the exercise or the pattern, and then let the student really have more kind of creative time on their own to discover. I think that's important. So not always walking them through everything and letting them have this sense of, discovering through themselves what they like, what they can do with something. And I think that's important. And I do remember my teachers kind of, teaching that way. And I think that's one of the things, it's a little different too. Like, it's a little bit of a side note, I guess, but, now with YouTube and all these different apps, and you can find anything, instantly and see exactly how the person's doing it. It's a lot more like just copying like verbatim, and not having to kind of think through, as creatively or you kind of eliminating the process of discovery, because everything's just right there all the time and exactly how it is or whatever, where, when I was younger, 9 times out of 10, there wasn't a video of something, right? You had to really listen and pick out different things and go to the library and find the CD or cassette or find the record, hoping they have it, and that process, kind of made it more meaningful in different ways and maybe led you to discover something else. It was kind of some more open creative process that I think used different parts of the brain and help you maybe discover more creatively, like your own voice, versus just like a lot of, sort of copying. So I don't know, maybe that's just me being old.
No, I mean, this topic and related things come up pretty often with my guests, and I think anyone, even people in, younger people still maybe didn't grow up with the internet the way it is now that I talk to, but most of us are older and didn't grow up with it at all. So, yeah, people grew up with a limited record collection, with the radio, maybe going to a few concerts, and then because your world is smaller, you could go deeper sometimes. It wasn't so scattered. You could be more focused. So,
yeah, and it really gave, I feel like gave me more time to discover, what was inside of me and who I was. And that ended up being incredibly important, because, when I was a kid, I was always picking up different instruments and kind of experimenting, just kind of messing around and just taking time to discover things. And then in high school, for sure, I was recording on a 4-track cassette recorder and layering different guitar parts and drum parts and piano parts and, different things, and learning about songwriting and composing and just creating, and little did I know that all that work, along with all my multi-instrument kind of studies and focus and rhythm, that I would be drawing upon all of that suddenly with composing myself, as like a focus, because of my ear problems. But I was all kind of unknowingly setting myself up for that, kind of perfectly with everything that I was doing. And the nice thing too about like studying drums and percussion is you kind of expected to, be well versed in all styles of music as a professional drummer. Sometimes, like with guitar and like, oh yeah, that person's kind of a rock guitarist or that's a jazz guitarist, But typically with a professional drummer, you're kind of expected to be able to play all styles of music. So I had the opportunity to study all that. So I kind of bring everything together in my own concoction. Sometimes I say, my music is, kind of like the lush strings and textures of classical music with the kind of excitement of jazz improv, with kind of world music rhythms and complexities all kind of smashed together in a kind of more popular song form, like 3-4 minute song form. Because that's just like a reflection of everything that I grew up doing. Like I listened to a lot of rock music when I was younger, played a lot of rock music. So that 3-4 minute song form is there and ingrained in me. Verse, chorus, bridge, chorus or whatever. And then, grew up playing orchestras and jazz big bands and rock groups and world percussion groups, it's fun to just kind of take all my favorite things from, and make my own thing with it. And that's, kind of what I do in a nutshell, I guess. Yeah. Opening, close. Yeah, I think that's how I think a lot when I write. Like my next album has a similar bookend thing. And sometimes I write the first and the last piece of the album first. Just, again, sort of naturally. It's not something I set out to do. And then I end up sort of filling it in, I don't know what that says about me, but I feel like, having that starting and ending point just makes sense to me. And then I sort of discover, okay, well, what's in between there? What's the journey from the start to the end? That's just what makes the most sense to me.
Yeah.
This clip is from the reprise of the opening to Resonance. So as we record this, pretty recently, you had an opportunity to do the Ragdale residency.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So I know that there's different disciplines of artists there. What kind of people did you meet? What were they doing?
Actually, right here is on that shelf is a Ragdale coffee cup. It's a new addition to the shelf. It was really amazing. It was actually an unexpected opportunity. I had not even heard of it, and so it didn't even apply. But I guess every term they pick one composer, musician, one dancer, one visual artist, I believe. So it's mostly writers and poets. And I guess the composer, musician had to drop out the last minute, and they ended up reaching out to some different organizations, and through the pipeline, I ended up getting recommended and picked. So I just tried to make the most of it. Luckily, it was close enough to Chicago. I could kind of go back and forth a little bit. But it was really interesting having the opportunity to be around a bunch of writers and poets. That's not the normal scene, that I'm around. And it was a good reminder of just how inspiring and invigorating it can be to be around, like different groups of creative people outside of your own little creative world. And it really gave me time to focus on some things I've been wanting to focus on. I kind of took it as a little sign from the universe, that, it's okay to slow down your teaching a little bit and focus on your own stuff a little more for a while. Yeah, I wrote like 4 new pieces while I was there, and about maybe 10, 12 other kind of musical ideas that I might develop. I wrote and finished 2 massive grants and submitted those. I got to spend some time in the prairie and woodland areas and take some nice photos and kind of be in the quiet and connect with some nature, and did a little collaboration with the movement artists there and some of the writers, and it was a really, really much needed experience, and really grateful for it. Yeah, I just finished 6 days ago. It was the last day.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you about your photography. I've enjoyed many of your beautiful photos on social media. Was that something you did before? Because I have this feeling like you've changed a lot over the course of your adulthood because of going through this crisis.
I mean, as far as photography, I don't know. I mean, I've always enjoyed. Well, interestingly enough, I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, like in high school, I took a photography class, and even had the chance to develop in the dark room with all the chemicals and all of that. But when I was younger, there just wasn't, we didn't have like the handy digital cameras or the phones, right? With good cameras. But I think I've always have just been excited about being creative in every capacity, whether it's with food or whether it's with photography or sculpture or painting, or at one point in high school, I even designed some clothing. I just always most naturally expressed myself, or what I think it is. I mean, I think that's how I like think through things, and like think through life, figure out solutions to problems. How I get my any negative thoughts or negative energy out of me. How I keep myself sort of lighter and just mentally and emotionally well. It's just I have to constantly be doing something like that, something creative, because doing that is like a rejuvenation, and a way of thinking and learning about the world around me, right, and myself, and others. So I think I've actually always been like that. I just, depending on what is available to me, I'll use it. And that's actually something I've come to terms with recently too, is that, like it doesn't matter that I'm not a classically trained concert pianist who's been studying since the age of 3. I studied some piano when I was in high school and college, but that never was a main focus. But I've been studying music and rhythm my entire life, and that's the core of everything. And so I've come to terms with I can express myself on any instrument that I choose, and it's going to be my voice and my thing, and creating another opportunity to share, and I feel good about that, and I'm excited about just continuing the journey, and I like to just try to inspire my students and other people to just not close themselves off or shut themselves off from just different creative opportunities around them, and kind of exploring different lineages of things or whatever. It's always been important to me.
Well, Joel, it was so great to meet you today, and thanks so much for joining me here.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please share this with your friends, and check out episodes you may have missed at leahroseman.com. If you could buy me a coffee to support this series, that would be wonderful. I'm an independent podcaster, and I really do need the help of my listeners. All the links are in the show notes. The podcast theme music was written by Nick Cold. Have a wonderful week.